Hello, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural podcast of So Basically Let's Talk. I'm your host, John Lasko. I'm so excited that you're with me today, and even more excited that you're with me on this new chapter of my broadcast journalism career. I sincerely thank you for being here with me. And I also want to let you know that this podcast is going to feature topics that are insightful, informative, educational, and yes, even at times entertaining. So I'm very excited about the topics that we are going to be discussing on So Basically Let's Talk. If you'd like to view the podcast, learn more about So Basically Let's Talk and myself, head on over to the website, sobasicallyletstalk.com. I would also appreciate it if you would subscribe to the So Basically Let's Talk channel on YouTube and give the thumbs up to those podcast episodes as they come out twice every month. You can log on to YouTube and type in So Basically Let's Talk. Thank you for liking those podcast videos as well as subscribing to the YouTube channel. I do sincerely appreciate that. And also be sure to follow So Basically Let's Talk on Facebook, So Basically Let's Talk, and also on X. The handle is So Basically Let's Talk. Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and start the inaugural podcast of So Basically Let's Talk. My guest today is Jake Sarwar. Jake and I used to work together at a television station in Northeast Pennsylvania called Fox 56 Wolf, WOLF. He spent 3 years as a multimedia journalist. I spent a little more than 4 years as a weekend anchor and reporter there. And we have since left that station. And he is now the deputy press secretary for Republican Pennsylvania Treasurer Stacy Garrity. Also, part of his duties and responsibilities is to follow Garrity to various events throughout the Commonwealth. Now, by doing all of this, the political bug has bitten Jake hard, and he is now exploring a political future himself. So what does that exactly look like? We'll find out when we talk to him in just a little bit. But two other questions also popped into my mind as well. How difficult or easy is it for a young man or a young woman to enter politics nowadays? And how easy or difficult is it for a young man or a young woman to be taken seriously by voters when they don't have that experience behind them or may have very little experience behind them, and especially when they're running against somebody who has years of experience? So without further ado, I am excited to begin this podcast today with my guest, Jake Sarwar. And Jake joins us now from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Jake, thanks so much for being a part of So Basically Let's Talk.
Thanks so much, John. I appreciate it. Hello to you from Cleveland. I know we're talking from many miles away, but I'm so excited for you for this new venture and to see where this podcast goes.
Well, I do sincerely appreciate that. And as I did my intro here, I did let our viewers know that you and I kind of have a special connection as far as how we met in the media. And it's also kind of a strange transition, maybe not a strange transition, but at the same time, it's a unique transition, I'll say, from media to working with a elected government official.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to kind of, again, like talk about what you were mentioning there, we met, what was it, almost 3-4 years ago now? And by met, I mean through our televisions, because we worked for stations that had what was called a news share, where we were all reporters and we had weather going on in Wilkes-Barre, but our anchors were in South Bend, Indiana. So we're like the University of Notre Dame, so that's where John was. So we got to know each other, of course, throughout the years, because when he was the anchor, I'd have to call him. He'd approve my scripts. But what were you doing then, John? Because that's what the more interesting part is. I'd always call you on a weekend because you had how long of a drive to work?
It was about an hour and a half drive.
Yeah, see, I mean, you had a decent drive, but it was really cool because I learned a lot from John during those times and just kind of how to write a script and everything. I mean, I remember one of my first really big kind of breaking news stories. It was 4th of July weekend, and there was a house fire here in the Wilkes-Barre area, and I didn't know what to do, and it was 10 a.m., and I was calling John, and he walked me through that whole process from then until we were live on air and what to do with the follow-up the next day, everything like that. So we learned a lot like that, and we built our friendship. And then towards the end of my career in news, I had the opportunity to go and kind of look at a few Cleveland stations. So it gave me the opportunity to go out and see John. So we finally did then get to meet right in person and got to hang out a little bit. He showed me all around Cleveland. I know the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is there and there's some lakes, right? But he showed me over there and everything. And basically just kind of solidified too that our friendship, even though it was built just kind of talking over the phone or FaceTimes and everything, we were still able to build a really nice friendship with that. So then, yeah, go ahead.
Well, let me just tell you something, Jake. The learning goes both ways because you know what? I wasn't an MMJ for a long period of time. So you taught me a lot about that and a lot about just about the hassles and just how much of a chore it is in order to have to, pick up 50 pounds of gear. And also too, being in your neck of the woods, which I've never been in your neck of the woods before, I did not realize just how sparse everything was from one another. So you had a drive in order to get from point A to point B and then back to point A again.
Correct. Yeah. So with Fox 56, we covered 17. Well, they still do. They cover 17 counties across northeastern and then central Pennsylvania. So you go all the way into kind of the Poconos and right up to the New Jersey border off Route 80, all the way north to basically the New York State border with Susquehanna County, Athens and Sayre and Bradford County, Little League World Series in Williamsport, which some of those rides are at least a good 2 hours away. And that's just in one direction. So you're completely right. You were getting all the gear and a lot of times in news, it's not always breaking, but sometimes it is that breaking story where it's like, get in, get your stuff, get in the car, and you figure it out as you go. But then on top of that, you are adding on that hour, 2 hour plus drive before you even get to the scene to then assess everything while you're there, try to understand, try to find, my thing when I would go out is I wanted to always have one element that maybe another station didn't have. And I think that's what all journalists aspire to or should really aspire to, right? So we might all have the same fire chief talking to us, or, maybe it's that Red Cross representative, but then I wanted to go into the town and talk to someone or try to find maybe a classmate of someone who, maybe something had happened to them or so. It was always one of those where you were hungry for more. You had to put all that together, send it back to get approvals and everything. And like I said, out in South Bend, and then eventually go live at 10 o'clock at night, and then have the 2 hour drive back. And then you're getting home some days, depending on where you were. And if you stopped, and I mean, listen, like we get hungry, right? We wanted to stop at Sheets or different places like that, and thank God, I mean, it wasn't probably the healthiest, but thank God there were 24-hour like restaurants or at least like diners or even again, like a Sheets or a Wawa. And then some days, you weren't pulling into the station until after midnight, 1 a.m. And then you came back the next day and you did it all over again.
So Jake, you kind of broke my heart when you decided to leave broadcast journalism because you're such a talented individual. So basically, Jake, you've entered the world of politics. Tell us more about that.
That is correct. I like the way you use the name of the show in the question. I appreciate that. Like you said, yeah. So I left the news after 3 years. I stayed on for the 2024 election just because I love politics and I went to school for it and just to kind of be on the front lines of everything. I mean, I've been at rallies with Trump, with Kamala, with Joe Biden, with former vice presidents, governors, the treasurer, anybody you can think of. I've been to their rallies, or we've been to campaign stops, or just different things that they've done throughout the years. So it's always something that I loved reporting on. And my contract was expiring on June 20th. So it was just a year ago that it expired. And I was kind of thinking of, yes, I want to be in news, but if it wasn't, then it's not a big deal, right? Like everything happens for a reason. And I was out reporting one day in Stroudsburg and the Poconos, and I had gotten a text from the press secretary for Treasurer Garrity. And she had said, hey, like I'm moving over to a different office. Here's my new email. It's active after a certain day. I leave on June 20th. And my immediate response was, that's pretty cool. My last day is also June 20th. Does the treasurer need a new press secretary? And that started the ball rolling. We started talking, and I started talking to the appropriate people within Treasury. So that was June 20th. By June 26th, I believe it was, I had a Zoom interview with some people from the comms department at Treasury. I also do FBLA on the side, the Future Business Leaders of America. We were away at our national conference in California. So I flew out to California, and when I landed, they said, hey, how about tomorrow? And I was able to jump on a quick Zoom call with them. And basically, by the next couple of weeks, I was notified that I got the job, and I started in Treasury on July 14th. So I actually started as a communication specialist too. So essentially, I was doing some press items, I was doing some items for social media, I was also helping when it came to media advisories, press releases, quotes, coming up with different quote graphics and such for the treasurer to approve. And then in about 5 months, so after Christmas time, I worked my way up to become the deputy press secretary for the treasurer as well. So still the kind of the same role that I was doing, but more, a little bit more of a heavier, intensive side to the press world. So, trying to make sure that we're getting her with different interviews that she might need, talking to different reporters, helping her prepare as well. That's also a great part of where my background comes in, where I'm able to help sometimes anticipate maybe just some questions that they may come up with as a reporter, or, just try to help her walk through some of those answers there as well. And then most recently, we had some changes within Treasury itself, and now I've added on an additional role where I'm kind of a special assistant for the treasurer, so I get to travel with her all the time. So just starting this past June, I know I'm saying this kind of because it's later in June, but just starting in June, I'm doing my actual, press duties as well that I was always doing, but now I've added in where I travel with her, I drive her around, and we get to go to different events. So we've gone to a few parades this month already. We've gone to some conferences as well. And it's just a really neat experience because I get to be a little more one-on-one with the treasurer, as well as, getting to see just the work that she does across the entire Commonwealth really firsthand.
No, that is cool and awesome at the same time. So basically, Jake, while you were doing all of your press duties for Stacy Garrity, the treasurer of the state of Pennsylvania, that political bug kind of bit you. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's definitely more heightened, right? I think I was bit a long time ago. Let's put it that way, right? And I mean, you and I have talked many times, right? Like especially right before I was going to leave the news, I didn't know if I wanted to run right then and there or what I wanted to do. But since I was a younger kid, maybe more elementary school aged, I've always been infatuated with like the White House and the Beast, Air Force One, the presidency. I used to know a lot of different facts. Those were the types of books I wanted to study. Like a lot of kids wanted to read like Matchbox Kids or, different things like that. Whereas I wanted to read James Buchanan's history or his autobiography, you know what I mean? Those types of things.
Absolutely.
So I was always really more intrigued with that. I loved going to DC and everything. So I had, like I said, kind of, if you want to say, you're bit by the bug, I was bit back then, right? But yes, it's definitely become more heightened now because every day I get to see government at work. And I know that sounds crazy, right? But there is government that does work. And especially within, our office and Treasury. And this isn't just me trying to plug it at all. It's truly because I've been around many different public officials and leaders throughout my time in news and even before then and doing internships and shadowing days. And again, I went to school for it. So I got to meet a lot of people in a short amount of time, and just the work that we do, and we really strive to try to produce some type of result for Pennsylvanians, has really made me think about the future and to think of, what are great things that we're doing, but then what are also things that can be improved on. And I think of that not even necessarily as a statewide level, maybe right now, but definitely more local in my local area to see, what could be improved, what could we bring in, what ideas, can kind of spark, either, new innovation, new business, whatever it may be within my own local community to try to help everybody a little bit more and really to get, even a younger generation more involved as, our parents, our grandparents are starting to get older.
No, that is absolutely awesome, and I commend you for that. What kinds of things have you learned from Stacy Garrity, and have you been able to maybe talk to other state and maybe even other politicians on the federal level in terms of, hey, I'm interested in politics. I'm interested in getting more involved in politics, but I don't know what that looks like. Can you tell me what that path is or what I should be doing right now? What kinds of questions have you been asking, who to, and what kind of guidance have you received?
So I'll answer that in two ways. So kind of at the state level, because again, I work hand in hand almost with the treasurer most days. That is more of I can truly ask her kind of anything. If I want to know more about a policy or what a certain investment was, or, the history of, reducing fees in some of our programs and such, and how she was able to do that. Like I could really kind of ask her about anything that really comes up within politics. And we have some really real conversations, and that's the nice part about it. And I think from her, the more I learned is that the most I've learned, excuse me, is that there are still people out there who believe in just helping one another, no matter what people say, it's not always a political game, right? And one thing I do to put into perspective is that I run all of her social media accounts. So from our treasury to also her Treasurer Garrity pages within Facebook, Instagram, X, Threads. It's going to be TikTok soon. Just throwing a few shameless plugs there. But with all those different pages,
go ahead. Yeah.
With all those different pages, I get to monitor, the comments, the direct messages, things like that. And there are some times where people will message us and they're not sure if we can help them or not. And the one thing she's always told me is, I don't care if we can't, we're going to help them find the person who does, right? If it's not our division, if it's not our bureau, our office, our department, whatever you want to say, that doesn't mean we still can't help someone. We don't just say, that's not us, maybe try this person. Like, we are truly looking online for them, trying to find a phone number for them to call, maybe an email, or maybe you knew of someone who worked there, so you pass along that information and then they could contact them. We try to do whatever we can to just help a Pennsylvanian. We'll be out on the road and, someone will come up to her, right? Say it's a veteran. And the treasurer is also a veteran as well. She's a retired U.S. Army Reserve colonel. She spent 30 years in the military. So a veteran will come up to her and say, hey, listen, I'm having an issue with, this, that, or the other thing with my VA benefit or something like this. And it might be a state issue. It might be a federal issue. It just depends. I swear on my life, she pulls out her phone and it's either taking down contact info or she's calling or texting someone immediately to try to help that person. And it doesn't have to just be veterans. Like, I'm just using that as an example. But even some of our own programs, if someone says, hey, listen, like, I've heard of PA Able, I'm just not sure if, myself, my child, whoever it is, would be eligible for that. She's immediately calling the director of the PA Able program to say, hey, here's this person, here's their information. You think they're eligible? And she gets an answer for people basically on the spot. It's just, again, it sounds weird to say your government at work, right? Because again, there's such a negative connotation about it, and rightfully so. I understand. I can see where people become frustrated with it, but to be with her is to understand that no matter what, she's trying to do something that's going to better another Pennsylvanian, that's going to better someone else, another community or whatever it may be, and to be able to just help them, prosper really as citizens of this country and of course our state. We also run the unclaimed property program for Pennsylvanians, and basically there's over $5 billion unclaimed property that's available for a Pennsylvania to claim. Since she took office in 2021, and again, shameless plug, but since she took office in 2021, only 5 years ago, she's returned over $1.2 billion just in her administration alone. It's an incredible amount, and that's money that belongs to taxpayers. That maybe it was that Sears rebate check that you didn't know you had from 25 years ago because you had your drill that was on sale, right? Something like that. It could be that. But then it also turns out to be tangible items like, military decorations that come to us in safe deposit boxes. And that, of course, like I told you before, she's a veteran, so that's really near and dear to her heart. Seeing even that side of things, of making sure that we're returning these medals, we're offering to families, hey, do you want to do an in-person return? Would you like to come out and see us? And if not, she's still sending a proclamation on behalf of the Commonwealth and the Treasurer of the Commonwealth to commend the military service for whoever the servicemen or women who may have passed on or just may have not known that their medals were left in a safe deposit box, whatever it may be. She's working so hard to get those back. So in a nutshell of everything you're saying, of everything you asked, I really think that I number one can ask her anything I need to when it comes to like government or just to bounce an idea off of her. But also I'm lucky enough to be able to watch her work every day and to see her work ethic and to see how she likes things and how, she goes about things, like I said, of just kind of being a solution oriented person and not we have a problem, we continue to discuss the problem, discuss as many times that happens. There's a problem, we're going to find an answer. And if we don't have an answer today, we're going to get you one tomorrow. She's pretty quick with it too.
So it sounds like Stacy is telling you not only about how to be that political figure, how to be in a position of authority, but being in a position of authority, or at least an elected position of authority, even though you may be up here on the totem pole, you still have to be down here, and being able to humanize and being able to sympathize
Well,
with people, and being able to talk to them
yeah,
one-on-one as a human.
yeah, to an extent, yes. So one thing she'll always say, and it's the truth, she's, first time of her being a politician, and you can't even really, you could loosely call her that, right? Like it's her first time, let's say, being an elected official, right? But coming from her military background and then her private sector, she worked in the private sector for those 30 plus years as well. And working in the private sector and her military career taught her to, take care of one another and take care of every person, and making sure that no one's left behind, things like that. And that's why it is a top-down type of system where she is going to kind of help whoever she can. She helps teach us different things as her staff members as well. So it really deals with a lot of that. So again, I wouldn't really say politician wise, but I'd say just as an elected official. The other thing I was going to say quickly too is many years ago, I still like to write letters. I think it's important to still write letters. Number one, it tests if you could still write, because everything now is, texting and your thumbs and everything, right? But also, I think that
AI writes everything nowadays. So
that's true. Well, I believe in a handwritten letter. So this is 2017, so about 10 years ago, and I read George H.W. Bush's book. Well, it was a book, excuse me, it was a book about George H.W. Bush. George W. Bush, so 43, wrote the book about 41, his father. It says, 41, A Portrait of My Father is what it's called. Mm-hmm. And it basically goes through his whole life and everything. And the story loosely goes, or the tale loosely goes, is that H.W. Bush was ashamed that he was never able to be elected again. Like he was elected to his first term, then Bill Clinton beat him and never sought out any other office. He was ashamed of that, so he never really wrote an autobiography. So a lot of books that you see that are out there, sometimes they're letters of his or things like that, whatever it may be, but it's always a different writer. It's not necessarily him. He's not writing his own autobiography. So his son wrote one for him. And number one, it's an amazing book. Shameless plug. I don't get anything from it, but it's just shameless plug. It's an amazing book, 41, Portrait of My Father. But it really taught me how, and again, if we think about 10 years ago, right? I mean, that was my first summer that would have been my first summer going from freshman year to sophomore year of college. So I was still pretty young. And it taught me a lot about him as a public servant, but also as a man, as a father, someone rooted in their faith, someone who, because a lot of times you think about like, everyone will say like, you can't have it all, but he did. He ran for those elected positions. He had appointed positions, became the vice president, the president of the United States, but still kept true to himself and his family. And I think that's something that's always good to aspire to, especially as a young, budding, hopefully, elected official one day. And I wrote to him. So I wrote to the former president. And at the time, that was when he had just started to develop his Parkinson's. And that was when he was like jumping out of a plane still, but they put him in a wheelchair right away. And I wrote to him and I really said, how much I enjoyed it and everything. And a few months later, I got a letter in the mail. And, and because you asked this earlier, this is a very long story, but you asked this earlier, and you had mentioned about, asking for advice. And that's what I did. I talked about how much I enjoyed certain parts of it in his life and everything, but I really did ask for advice as to what he thinks is good for, again, a young, aspiring public official or public servant, excuse me. So he sent me back a letter. And it's on his official letterhead. It's a weird size. It's not like an 8x10. It's not a 5x7. It's kind of like an in-between. But it's on his official letterhead. It's all written out to me. It's like actually typed out. But at the very bottom, it's actually signed and his signature bled through the back. So you could tell it wasn't an auto pen, wasn't anything like that. But he basically wrote about how, my letter, made his spirit soar and everything. And his biggest advice was, start local, start with grassroots, start with school boards, things like that, because that's where you're going to learn the most, and especially grassroots. He says that is where you're going to learn the most from the people in the community that you could have the most amount of an impact with. Not to say that bigger groups or anything doesn't, but if you think about these larger issues within your own area, it's those Facebook groups that are going out about it, right? It's the Facebook groups that are causing the news stations and the newspapers to show up to the meetings. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't, because there's such an uproar online. So that's like, that was something really big that he kind of taught me there. And then I also told him I aspire one day to become the president. And he actually sent me a pair of cufflinks from his presidential library that says, "I'm sending along a souvenir for a future POTUS." So it's his cufflinks. They have sat in a drawer in their box. I looked at them, of course, but they've never been opened or worn before. So what I'm going to do is hopefully one day when I cross that threshold and I'm on the Capitol steps with, my right hand to God and I'm taking the oath, I'll be wearing his cufflinks.
So other than what you're doing with Stacy Garrity and her office, what steps have you taken in order to kind of dip that big toe, so to speak, into the lake of politics?
Yeah, I guess more recently, just to kind of get myself in the door, I ran for local Republican committee. So for my township back home in the Poconos, I ran for committee there, and I was elected a committeeman. So I'm going to slowly start to go to some events and some meetings and everything to try to not even just get my name out there, but just to support other candidates and the party itself and such, and just to again get kind of that front row seat to just how things work, or the networking opportunities as well. So I've been starting to do that a little bit as well. And then, like I said, I have tons of autobiographies. I probably have too many to count, of just various public officials. If it was George P. Schultz, who was a Secretary of State many, 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 many years ago. If it was Condi Rice's, which was again, she was under George W. Bush. Or even again reaching out to the current Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Like I've been looking at different things like that. Same thing with like Nikki Haley, people like that with her experience as a UN ambassador. I'm trying to always just read up on more or listen to their podcasts and such. I listen to probably 4 or 5 different podcasts throughout the week. Some are current events, some have really good interviews with different people and such. So I try to just keep on top of as much stuff as I can and always just continue to learn.
Absolutely. And hopefully, so basically, Let's Talk will be one of those podcasts that you'll be able to turn to and be able to, gain that, little nugget of wisdom that, will help you along on your political career. So hopefully that'll be the case. But, it's good.
Am I not getting paid for this? Is that not? Wait, we didn't work that out. Oh, no. All right. Well, see you, John. I'm sure it'll be one that could help with everything.
Sorry,
but please monetize him, because
the coffers here are dry, and they've just been dry. So I am interested, Jake. How do you get your name out to people throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania? It's easy to get your name out and be able to talk to people who you know and who people know you, but it's completely opposite when you're talking to a total stranger. So how do you approach people and say, "Hey, I'm Jake Sarwar. I'm running for this political office," or "I would like to run for this political office. Here's what I stand for. What do you think of me being a candidate for this particular position?" How do you approach total strangers in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to say, "I'm interested in running for this specific position, and here's the reasons why you should vote for me"?
Yeah, I think the first step is to be on TV, and no, I'm just kidding. But it does come with the recognition. You're completely right with that. I think, and I would start smaller, like within my own local area or so. I don't know if I would go fully statewide right away. But I think that in both ways, it could kind of be applicable, where I am a shy person to begin with, and it might not always seem that way, especially with the jobs I've had, but I truly am. Like, it was always something that I had to kind of, and maybe that's a reason why I did it for so long, just kind of like build up my courage to go up and ask strangers random questions and such, as a reporter. But I think that networking is going to be your best friend in something like that, because as long as it might not be everyone, but as long as that one person, they could introduce you to 10, right? They could start to help you and get that word out there. I do believe strongly in word of mouth, but I also believe in the power of technology and social media, even though it's crazy sometimes and it could be addictive and kind of a crux to us as a society in some ways. It's also the way so many people are getting their information. especially the younger generation, right? We're approaching a time where, you know, we just had students just graduate from high school a few weeks ago, and most of them, not all, but most of them are either 18 or they're 17 turning 18, probably pretty soon, or at least within the time of the next election. So, where are they most, right? Like, you want to meet them kind of where they're at. I'm a firm believer in that. So if they're going to be on the different social media platforms, you have to get your word out there. If it's just with creative videos, creative designs, um, hosting events, whatever it may be. And like I just said before, too, again, like meeting someone where they're at has always been something that I've thought it was a great idea and wanted to take pride in. So, and if you were to hypothetically say you're running for something that is statewide, well, yeah, you're going to want to go out and meet people that are in central PA and Dauphin County and Harrisburg. Then you're going to want to go out to southwestern PA and head on down to Greene County. That's literally the bottom tip of Pennsylvania, or the bottom kind of corner, excuse me, of Pennsylvania, right? You're going to want to meet people there. You're going to want to drive up a few hours to Pittsburgh and drive another few hours up to Erie. All people matter throughout the entire Commonwealth. And sometimes you just need to meet them where they're at to, again, express kind of what you would want to do. Now, say it is something where it is a little more local, where it's like running for state rep. I think or state senator, I think a big thing to do is do your research, right? Like I was saying before, technology is great, but sometimes we don't always want to read, or we always want to be just a headline reader. And I'm guilty of that too. I can't say that I'm not. Sometimes I am a headline reader. But I think really reading more in depth into different issues, even if it's an article, if it's one of those Facebook groups like we were talking about before, in Northeastern and Central PA, big things that are big no-nos for most of the community are data centers and also solar fields, that they'll buy farmland and make these massive solar fields. A lot of people are against them throughout Northeastern, especially the Poconos, and Central PA going towards more, again, the rural areas. Before taking a side at all, I think it's important to see what everybody's saying, right? Because both sides are going to have valid points in some way. Mm-hmm. And to really understand kind of where you're going to stand there, or just kind of want to kind of learn more about them, you meet them where they're at, you host events with them, you welcome them to call you or message you or stop by at a fair, or whatever it may be, to understand those issues. And then you could start to build that platform a little more. And then going back to the old school traditional door knocking, right? That's good old canvassing. Just, on a Saturday morning, get your supporters, get your friends, get everybody
hands,
together.
Kissing babies,
shaking hands, kissing babies. Yeah. Exactly. High-fiving a child, whatever you got to do, getting yourself out there. I know a lot of people, especially now, we're in Pennsylvania, we just had our primary in May. We're heading into our general in November, like everybody else really for the general. But we have had a bunch of different candidates start to organize door knocking days and such, where, hey, we all meet up at this one church parking lot. They bring donuts, a little coffee, and then everyone's assigned a place, and you go and you start to spread that message a little bit of what you want to do. I think sometimes that it can be seen as, especially being younger at times, that, you might not know everything, or, you think you know everything, right? But I think that's where, if you could back it up and prove, hey, listen, like, that could be true, but I've also taken the time to listen to both sides and understand more and understand the benefits, the risks, whatever it is. You could really show what your platform is and how beneficial it really could be to whatever area you want to serve.
Now, it's no big secret that Stacy Garrity is a Republican, and she is running on the Republican ticket for governor against the incumbent Democrat, Governor Josh Shapiro, in order to be able to take over the top job in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. First off, Jake, do you consider yourself a Republican?
Sure. I am a registered one. I think there's a difference between moderate, conservative, Rhino, MAGA. There's so many, and it's the same thing on the Democratic side too. I'm not saying, there's like different variations there too, but yeah, I absolutely would say that I might be a little more moderate, but I definitely align more with the Republican Party in many ways.
And with being a Republican and wanting to get into politics, whatever that might look like on your end, does being a Republican in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania pose a challenge?
I don't know if I have a definitive answer for that. I think that it's very strong. There are very strong bases on both sides throughout the entire Commonwealth. You know, there are people who are unhappy with the way things are running right now within our state government, but then there's people who are also unhappy with our federal government and like the way our state government's running, right? I wouldn't say that it's necessarily a challenge, but I think just as a whole, the entire, not even Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but the entire country has just become so divisive. And, if you feel one way about something and I feel another way, we can't just, walk out skipping, holding hands kind of thing. We have to fight to the death, and it's getting to a point where it's a little crazy like that right now. So again, I wouldn't say I have a definitive answer of that. It's hard to be a Republican or run as a Republican in Pennsylvania because there's support for both parties no matter what, and maybe more people are voting one way rather than another, meaning Democrat versus Republican, but there's still people who believe in the messaging and believe in kind of just, the brighter tomorrow, right? That's what a lot of candidates are always trying to kind of push out there. And then there are some people who too, I will say, will be a Democrat who will vote Republican in a general because we're a close primary, or it'll be a Republican who sometimes might vote Democrat,
So, Jake, when you approach your family and friends, not necessarily total strangers, and you say, I'm really interested in going into politics and I'm really interested in doing this, that, or the next thing.
Yeah.
Do you get any strange looks? Do you get any people who try to talk you out of it? Or is it more so positive than anything else? What kind of reaction do you get from family and friends when you tell them that I want to enter the political arena, whatever that might look like?
Yeah. Whenever it's my family and friends, it's never anything negative. Because like I talked about earlier with like when we were talking about like having the bug for it or getting bit by the bug, and like they've known a lot of this since I was a kid. There's a lot of people who over the years have volunteered to be like, hey, like you call me whenever you want to run for anything. I'll knock on doors, I'll fold mailers, I'll lick envelopes for you. I have a running list of people who would do that. I'm very fortunate in my life to have people that, and a lot of them, and not saying just my family, even some friends who we don't see eye to eye when it comes to things politically, right? But would still, in some way, shape, or form, be willing to kind of drop things and help me out. When I tell my family, the biggest thing, they always understand, and I think they know that, and especially in the last few years, and maybe even in the last like year or two that I've worked for Treasury and everything, I may come in with a different perspective now, right? Or there might be an issue, we're watching the news as a family, right? Like how we used to be sometimes as a society, right? Like, as you and I both know. But
yeah, things
how
are totally and completely different now with being able to get your news on demand from,
that's a
from
whole
this
other
thing
episode
right here. So yes,
that's a whole other episode of this. So basically, but like we'll watch the news at night and everything. There's certain issues that like I just start not even going off about, but I just start talking about it. I'm like, well, why don't they do it this way? So like I've always been very intrigued of, trying to either find solutions or, different ways or, looking around my own community and saying, we could use this, we could use that. So I think when I tell them that I want to run for things, it's never a, no, I don't think so, or no, you shouldn't, or, ooh, you want to run for something. It's always a, okay, how do you not lose yourself, but also still go out there and serve people? Because we believe you can. And that's the biggest thing, especially from my parents. It's always the hard advice of a lot of people get they kind of succumb to the fame and the power and the fortune, if you want to say, when it comes to being in a higher office or a power or something like that to make decisions. And their advice is always, you could do whatever you set your mind to. We know you're going to do this, but at the end of the day, you still need to be yourself. You can't, just because, and I don't know if it's this extreme, but just because that, check sounds really nice for whatever that is, but then you have to like sell your soul away in order to receive the money and such. That's when you lose yourself, and that's when you shouldn't do it. But as long as you can continue to keep yourself and, fight for something that means something to you, then yeah, they're right behind me 100%.
No, that is awesome. And you know what? You brought up another good point too, as far as money. I mean, it seems like nowadays, you have to be a millionaire or a billionaire in order to
Mm,
be able to run for public office, just to be able to afford advertising time on a radio station, a TV station, being able to get
yeah.
mailers together, let alone paying for the postage for those mailers and getting a staff together and everything like that. So, have you thought about where that money comes from, or how you're able to be able to juggle all of that without having to overextend yourself?
Yeah. I know that depending on it, and I'm just talking like a smaller like house race, right? Not to say races are small, but you know what I mean. I've thought about it in the sense of like, yeah, maybe some of it would have to come out of pocket. I'm not talking like thousands of dollars though, but maybe like the printing for the month or this, that, or the other thing and such. Would kind of come out of pocket. Thank God for free Canva. Love Canva. You could design a bunch of posters and ideas and stuff. I mean, but like if you look at like some stuff that like people are putting out now, it's all AI anyway, and I don't go for that, but you could tell when it's AI. But even that is a free service. You know what I mean? But free Canva would work great and everything. And like donations would be great when it comes to stuff like that. But I also think that you lose yourself, like I was talking about, when you have that organization, which might sound really cool and it's shiny and pretty, and they want to give you $50,000, but I'm running in Pennsylvania and it's an organization that's based in Hawaii and they just throw money out to different candidates, which again is nice, but you know, then it almost feels like you have to have that private interest there, right? Or meaning not like actual money interest, but meaning the interest
Well, you
of
don't want to be
another
the slave. You don't want to be a
organization.
slave to the money, or a slave to the
Exactly. Yeah,
person who gave
because
you the money.
maybe they want to give you that and that's great and everything, but in the terms it's that little nugget that says, and we will also build data centers, or you know what I mean, something, and then you're like, wait, but like if you think about it, then you're like, I
If I
just
if
sold
I give
myself
Jake
out for my
Sarwar $1
community.
million, I've got his ear from now on if he's elected
Never.
into
I'm
whatever
never
office
picking
that
up
is.
your calls. I'm taking a flight away. No, but no, but like exactly, like you're completely right. Exactly, like either you have someone's ear or something comes up, and then it's like, well, we'll pull our money from you, we'll pull our funding, and then you're like, wait, then I can't use anything. Or even if you're in office, right? Like then it's like, well, if I don't have that, will I get reelected again and such? So yeah, so the money part can be a little tricky. But I think that again, if you care about your community and you build that base, and it might have to be a little DIY for a little bit. And I don't think that's a terrible thing, but it might have to be a little DIY. And like we said, maybe going to certain events. So maybe, you spend maybe a couple hundred, I'm not really sure how much there, but maybe it's a couple hundred on like big signage that you could bring to, the local VFW because you're going to talk to veterans. And it's a big thing where either you can get pictures, but it's also something that says your name for this House district or for Senate or for Congress, whatever you want to say, right? Like maybe you spend a little there, but you could use that multiple places,
Mhm.
right? You have the social media game of everything. And yes, you could, if you really wanted to, you could do paid promotions. It's not crazy amounts of money on social media. But if you start to just put it in certain groups, and then, like you're saying, you mentioned something about a team. If you surround yourself with a team of people that, maybe it is some of your family. Maybe it's your best friend. Maybe it's your best friend's mom who you've been going to their house since you were a kid. If they're posting it to their friends and they're reposting and they're reposting and they're reposting, and even it's getting angry reactions, who cares? It's still getting out there and people are seeing it. So, I think to start off, like, again, locally within Pennsylvania and like a state race, it might be a little easier to start that way of just, we need to invest a little bit, but can make this work. But then, yes, I think as you go higher and you seek even higher office, like if I were to run for president and I make everything in Canva, I mean, that'd be pretty cool, but I don't think that that'd be possible. And then at that point, that's when you have like, maybe like a consulting firm and people like that who'd be able to help you out a little bit as you go.
What advice would you give to somebody who may be watching this episode of So Basically Let's Talk, and you've kind of inspired them in order to want to, try to see what they could do in the political realm, the local political realm, the state political realm, the county political realm, whatever that might look like to them? What kind of advice would you offer him or her that is watching right now that says, I resonate with what Jake is saying, and I've too have had thoughts and feelings, but I've never acted on those thoughts or feelings before, and I really want to do that right now. What would you say to that individual watching right now?
Number one, I'd say, why are you watching this? Um, but number two,
No, don't say that.
oh, okay, you could cut that out. No, I think I would say, first off, I don't ever think of myself as that, right? That could be like, not to say inspiring, but just, or let's put it this way, you never think that how much of an impact you would have on someone sometimes, right? Um, I would always say continue to try until that's it. Like you just got to keep trying and trying and trying. If that means, like I've said before, like maybe you want to write to, again, a former president of the United States, you want to write to a former secretary of state or whoever it may be, write to them, call them, look them up, see what they're doing nowadays. Sometimes they're working for other organizations or they have their centers and everything. Get in touch with them and try to see if you could even get some advice from them. I would also say go to, local meetings, go to your county council meetings, go to your school board meetings, things like that, because number one, you're going to understand how a meeting works. And sometimes they're not as fun as they look on TV, right? Not every day is there going to be something controversial that comes up, but it's going to teach you Robert's Rules of Order, which is what they use to, kind of wrap the meeting in, to, keep, some type of decorum while you're in the meeting and such, bringing things up for a vote, right? Like all those in favor, all that stuff that you may have heard before over the years is all from Robert's Rules of Order, but you'll get to see kind of how that works at those local levels for that. And then I'd also say you're never too old to want to shadow someone or get that internship or anything like that. Like especially, I mean, I've known students from high schools before where, I give them my card from Treasury and I say, okay, like they're really interested, or they might have been interested in news, or they're interested in comms or politics, whatever. And I say, here's my card, email me, text me, whatever you need, give you advice. You could come out, you could shadow me, you can meet certain people, things like that, But I also always say with that, never be afraid to advocate for yourself in that sense, right? It's a little scary to make that first step to say, ooh, this is something I might want to do, but start to see what you can do and then get involved. Like we've said earlier with like grassroots, get involved with the local community. If you align with the Democrats, you align with the Republicans, whatever, every single one of them, especially now in the summer, we're in an election year, they're going to have tables at fairs, right? So maybe you're going to your local fair anyway, or it's something that you want to volunteer time and get some volunteer hours out of it, and you want to do it throughout the day. Go down there, see what they have to offer, see what they're doing, see how they're promoting candidates, and see, and that's a great way to see too, like, would I rather be a Republican? Would I rather be a Democrat? Am I a moderate? Am I a libertarian? It could help you there as well. Again, just really putting yourself out there, trying to get answers to questions you may have, and never think that anything you're asking is too dumb, because trust me, I've asked a dumb question multiple times, and if I'm asking it, it's such a cliche, but it is so true. Someone else is thinking. They just ask the questions, see what it is. And then I think, if we switch this over to that high schooler that just graduated, that's going to college, or someone in college, even if you know what you want to do, you want to become a lawyer since you're a kid. That's great. You've wanted to be a mechanical engineer for the last like 3 years after that one cool class. When you get to the college level college level, start to look for the internships, look for shadowing opportunities, look for whatever you can so that you get that hands-on experience that you could see. Because maybe you'll go in and say, oh, I really don't like this. I love learning about it. And then maybe you think to yourself, oh, maybe I want to be the teacher for it then, right? Or, wow, I don't like this at all. And you change your major completely and you go work for news, or you go work for the government, things like that. It's always important to just, again, put yourself out there and see what's out there while, you have time like this where you're able to, you're home in the summers, things like that. What I did, I was going into my freshman year of college. She's now our state senator back home, but I volunteered, I guess that you could say, with our state rep at the time. And what I would do is I would go in on Mondays. I'd work 5 hours on a Monday. Again, unpaid, but it was to get the experience and to see it out and everything. And I'd work with her whole district office staff. And what I did most of the time was I made phone calls for happy birthday. I would have to
Mhm.
call and say, I'm calling from State Rep Blank's office, and we were calling to wish you a happy birthday. And if someone wasn't there on the voicemail, it'd be like, we're calling to wish you a happy birthday. Call us back. Some were belated birthday calls, whatever it was. And that was one of my jobs. Also
Mhm.
people coming in,
Mhm.
so constituents, who had issues or anything like that. And I got to work with the office manager, the chief of staff, the rep herself sometimes as well. And I got to see that it was really cool. It's something I wanted to do. In college, I also had an opportunity where I did a leadership program, and then at the end, they match you up with someone in your career. So at the time, my state senator, he was still in office, and they hooked me up with him. I met him out at the Capitol. I spent an entire day with him. We had lunch together. We were in policy meetings. I learned how his team actually helps him craft a bill that he wants to introduce. And it's more intricate than people think, right? Like we always think of like, I'm just a bill sitting on Capitol Hill, which is true. Like that is the process. However, the process to even get it on paper from the memorandum that they want to send around to introducing it in committee to making changes, whatever it is, all the way to get to the governor's desk or the president's desk, whatever you want to say. It's a process. So to sit in there, to sit in his meetings, and then for him to bring me onto the Senate floor and to welcome me and like get to kind of put on the official Senate record that I was in there from my college and I was shadowing him for the day and everything. It really, really opened my eyes to a lot of stuff. But if I didn't ask for that opportunity or when someone presented it and I didn't jump on it right away, who knows if I'd be here today.
Absolutely. Well, we are running out of time, but my last question for you,
Thank
Jake,
God.
is
No.
is
Hit me with
do
it,
you
John.
do you do you have any regrets? Do you look back in the past and say, boy, if only I had done this when I was in college, or if only I had done this
Yeah.
when I graduated from college? Do you have any type of regrets whatsoever that you did not do this or pursue this sooner?
Today, no. Maybe 5, 10 years ago, sure. Yeah. Um, I think that I, there are times where, yes, I've looked back and been like, I wish I had done that. I wish I ran for this, or even like a position in school or a club, whatever. Like, I wish I did this. I wish I did that. But then I look back on it a little bit more, and especially now that I'm getting older, and maybe this is just kind of just the natural progression of life. Um, I look back on it a little bit more, and I start to notice too that if I did do that then, I wouldn't have went down this entire path, right? So one thing I'll always say is, and this could be a little long, but I'll try to keep it short. When I was in junior year of high school,
Mhm.
my plan was to go to culinary school. Everybody, even though I love politics, like that was always a thing. It's never like it just popped up. Everybody knew me as the kid that was going to go to culinary school. My family loved it. I used to remember people would say, "Oh, like you're gonna like we're good cooks, but you'll learn like the actual knife skills and everything like that we never had." And I started to teach myself a little bit. And halfway through junior year, I just didn't feel it anymore. Something
Mhm.
in me changed. Um, and I said, I can't do this anymore. So by senior year, I was accepted to the top 2 culinary schools in the country. I still visit one of them all the time because they have phenomenal food. Shout out to the CIA. But we went to open houses, accepted students' days, anything you could imagine. I mean, I have the free stuff from them. I had shirts, I had, keychains, whatever, like we had everything because that's where I was going to go. And it was St. Patrick's Day of senior year. So if you think about that, that's March, and we normally graduate now they graduate in May, but really back then it was like mid June. And I told my parents, like, I kind of broke down and was like, I can't do this. I don't want to go for this. I don't want to do this anymore. And that was a big decision, right? I mean, like, especially as like a 17-year-old to be able to just say like, I'm switching my whole life up at this exact moment. And my parents gave me a lot of tough love, which in the time you're like, oh gosh. But now looking back, it's like I also want to hopefully be able to have that skill with my own children one day because it taught you a lot. But I then found King's, where I went to college in Wilkes-Barre, where I worked for a while too, so it did a lot. And I have made some of my best friends in the entire world. The guy who will be the best man at my wedding is my best man, my best friend to this day. Um, he's like a brother to me, and I met him here and everything, right? So in the first year or so of college, because that was so quick, right? Like that was only a few months later, you did think to yourself, gosh, what if I did go to the Culinary Institute, right? Like, what if I actually went there? But now looking back on it, I wouldn't have had any of the experiences I've had so far. I would never met you because I wouldn't have gone into news, right? Again, my best friend in the entire world, two of my best friends actually went here and everything, right? And one still works here as well. You know, I wouldn't have all those opportunities. So I think that over time, I've started to switch the regret mindset into it happened for a reason, right? For some reason, if it's God, if it's a religious thing, if it's the plate tectonic shifting in the world, I don't freaking know. But if it's something, something has changed. And that's where, like, when I think about leaving news, because you knew, I mean, you of all people knew how much that was hard. I mean, John, to throw it out there, John and I talk all the time, and he knew that, like, it was a struggle for me to find a job and to make it worth it that I would be able to just pick up and leave, right? You know, especially with like the way they pay in the industry, things like that. There's a lot that rode on that decision. So it was tough to transition over, but I think back to, you know, I'm coming up about a year now with Treasury, and I think back and it's not like a, hey, I regret not finding a news job anymore. You know, some days I miss it, but it's not like a regret. It's a right place, right time. I was supposed to find out about her press secretary leaving at that time and her deputy at the same time. So like I was supposed to find out about that. I was supposed to go to California and do the interview then, right? Even thinking like I wasn't even in the state and I did the interview. I was thinking about getting hired and doing the HR paperwork from a hotel in California and then coming back to Pennsylvania and starting basically 10 days later. And now over a year later, getting promoted, taking on a new responsibility, earning the trust, at least I hope the trust of an elected official, but also building friendships with our whole front office staff, our comms team, people, I mean, our security officer, right? Like I love going down to see him all the days that I'm in and stuff like that, you know, and then getting to be on the road and meeting all these people and being able to return home to Northeast PA, right? And like to still have that kind of homecoming, but then get to see other parts of the state that I probably would have never been able to do. So again, long story short, it's never a regret anymore. It's that was the right place, the right time. Even in the moment, if it sucks, right place, right time, that leads to something better.
Absolutely. And with all the traveling that you do with Stacy Garrity, I'm sure that you have a lot of opportunities in order to be able to shake those hands and kiss those babies and be able to get your name around so that, you know, when you go to whatever place, Pennsylvania, they're going to say, there's Jake Sarwar.
I mean, they did that to begin with. That's not.
I know him.
Yeah. There's some, you know, it is funny. There are some times where we'll go somewhere and someone's like really staring at me and like they're like, I know you. And I'm like, I was on Fox 56. Oh, okay, yeah, no. You know what I mean? Like, or like sometimes, honestly, sometimes the treasurer will introduce me as that. She'll be like, you probably remember Jake from the news. And they're like, oh my gosh, yeah. We're going to a parade on Saturday and I was on the phone with someone and he and I were talking about like knowing the area, and he's like, Jake, what was your last name? I told him, he's like, it's so familiar. And I was like, Fox 56. He was like, oh my gosh, I knew you. Like, we were just on the phone talking. I was getting logistics for a parade on Saturday. So it still happens, which is nice because then too, like I still know parts of the area and stuff like that, but I do get to be on the road a lot. And I basically have touched every major city and every part of this Commonwealth in the last year, which is 67 counties. It's a lot. It's from Harrisburg to Erie. So again, like the northwesternmost part of the state is a good 4 to 5 hours away, and we've done that multiple times. So there's a lot there.
Well, you are a good man, Jake Sarwar, and you are also a great man for coming on. So basically, let's talk. I do sincerely appreciate the time that you've taken to talk a little bit about your past experiences, your current experiences, as well as offering that advice to those who are watching the program, who do have political aspirations of their own, who don't know how to get started or really getting on the right track anyway to be able to see that come to fruition. And I know that you've probably helped one or more people in our audience be able to hopefully be able to make that decision, that determination determination and be able to give them that sense of direction that they need in order to be able to make that happen. So Jake Sarwar, I tip off my hat to you and everything that you are doing. And I hope that you will come back on. So basically, let's talk to be able to fill us in on what has been happening in your life, both personally as well as politically, so that we can follow up with you on your political endeavors in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
My friend, thank you so much. I'm excited for this new venture. I'll try to come on as much as I can. Maybe I'll just be here waiting in the wings for you to bring me back on. But no, seriously though, I'm excited for you. This seems really good. And where do I send the invoice? Do you have the address? Or I was told by the hour. It's been a little bit.
I'll give you that PO box address after the episode is over. So there you go.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Thanks.
All right, Jake. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Well, I hope you found my interview with Jake to be very insightful, informative, and educational, as I did. And we also had a little fun in the process by reminiscing about our days at Fox 56 in Northeast Pennsylvania. And I want to thank you for joining me today for the inaugural podcast of So Basically Let's Talk. Remember, you can revisit this episode on our website, so basically let's talk.com, also on our YouTube channel, So Basically Let's Talk. I do sincerely thank you again for giving the thumbs up to those videos, as well as subscribing to the channel. And you can also follow us on social media, So Basically Let's Talk, on both Facebook and X. And you can get a hold of me directly via email at sobasicallyletstalk@gmail.com. Again, I am John Lasko, the host of So Basically Let's Talk. And until I see you again in the next one, stay safe and have a great day, everyone.